Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this video, I will be previewing the 49ers matchup against the Houston Texans preseason week 3. But before we get into that, a couple of announcements for later this week. Thursday morning, 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'll be going live with my boy John J from 49ers Ultimate Report. It's going to be on his channel, so I'm going to post a link in the description to his channel so you can check that out. Also, later that day on Thursday, game day, I will be live streaming the entire first half of the game against the Texans. I won't be available for the second half. Do have some plans for that night. I'm going to be going to a concert, but the first half, and that's where we're going to see a lot of the starters play. So without wasting any more time, guys, I'm going to talk about my 5 things that I'm looking for from the 49ers in the matchup against the Texans on Thursday. The first thing that I want to talk about is, of course, going to be quarterback Trey Lance. Now, when it comes to this preseason game, now we know that preseason there's only 3 games, and preseason week 3 this year is going to be a really, really big one because of the way the 49ers preseason schedule worked out. We didn't really play almost 0 starters against the Minnesota Vikings on previously in week 2, but we're going to see a lot more of them out there in the game against the Texans, and Trey Lance will, of course, be one of them. I expect him to get 2, maybe 3 series, depending on how long the drives are. But what am I looking for from Trey Lance? Well, essentially what we saw against Green Bay, some more of that. What I want to see initially is command of the offense, getting the play calls in on time so you can get to the line of scrimmage, read the defense, make any play adjustments that you deem necessary. But not only that, getting the motions, because we know Shanahan in that offense, there's motions on almost every single play. But that's number 1. Now, number 2, what I think Shanahan is going to be giving Trey Lance is going to be probably a couple of the short, quick passes, couple of intermediate routes, and then maybe 1 or 2 deep passes. That way, Trey gets to basically test all parts of the field in this preseason matchup. So one of the things, too, that we know that this offense really thrives off of, and it did quite well with Garoppolo, was snap and then quick pass to Debo or to Kittle or to Ayuk or whoever. I'd like to see maybe Trey perform 1 or 2 of those. We know he can do it. We've seen him do it before, but just to kind of get that practice in, you really get that muscle memory down. I want to see him, perform, of course, on intermediate routes, and then, of course, the deep passes, which we saw him do it really well against Green Bay on the touchdown pass to Danny Gray, but hopefully we see more of that. Just the accuracy. Ideally it turns out to be a touchdown, but even just seeing the accuracy, and then last but not least, just that poise and that ability to, just have that sixth sense in the pocket. We saw him do that a little bit against Green Bay, but just knowing when to basically tuck the ball and just run and then definitely slide, but B, being able to, maneuver in the pocket so you can avoid sacks, keep your eyes down the field, make a throw, and make a play. I do have a ton of faith in Trey Lance, and I really think he's going to be fantastic. And I'm really, really, really excited to see what he does Thursday evening against the Houston Texans, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. The second thing that I'm going to be looking at is a player in particular on the offensive side of the ball, and that is going to be Jauan Jennings. So in my eyes, of course, we know Debo, Ayuk, wide receivers 1 and 2. After that, I think Danny Gray, just even as a rookie, has been phenomenal this offseason. A lot of great reports out of training camp. He's done very well in preseason games besides for the 1 drop. And in my eyes, he might be actually a guy who ends up getting more snaps than Jauan Jennings. By all accounts, Jennings has been okay so far this offseason. So I'm really looking to see how he does in this matchup. Now, Jauan really thrives in my eyes when it comes to key downs. 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, in the red zone. So hopefully there are opportunities in this game that Trey Lance or ultimately Sudfeld or Purdy can throw to Jauan Jennings in those situations. What I typically like from Jennings, too, is not only his ability to catch in traffic, but also to get yards after the catch. We know this offense, that's such a huge part of it, and Jauan Jennings did a great job down the stretch of last season, so I'd really, really, really like to see him do that in the game on Thursday, maybe break a tackle or 2, just get that physical nature back. That was one of the things which I think really endeared him to so many 49er fans towards the end of last year, was his physical play. He put a big hit on Trevon Diggs in the playoff game, just blocking, and then just being able to, again, get yards after the catch. He did have a pretty bad drop in the game against Minnesota on a third down. If that was a regular season game, boy, Shanahan would not be happy with that at all. But hopefully, Jauan can really prove and show that why so many people, including myself, are still very high on him this year. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a part of the team by any means, but it's one of those things where Danny Gray has just done a fantastic job. So I really don't want Jauan to lose out on too many snaps. Let's hope he bounces back with a big game against the Houston Texans. So points number 3 and 4, they might be considered a bit of a cop-out, but here is what I'm looking for. Point number 3 is going to be the offensive line. It's one of those things where it's been really, really inconsistent in the preseason so far. To be expected, we have a lot of different guys coming in and coming out. Of course, some of the big focuses for me are going to be on Spencer Burford, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, but also Jason Poe has been really, really doing well. Not only played well against Minnesota, but in practice, even got some reps with the first team offense, which is great to see. But another guy who I'm going to really, really zero in on is going to be Colton McKivitz. Now, it really sounds like Mike McGlinchey's status is a little bit up in the air. He's not practicing right now. Who knows how long, if he's re-injured his quad or what the deal is, what's happening with him. But perhaps his, maybe week 1, week 2, maybe we don't see McGlinchey out there. So Colton McKivitz would be number 1, I think, to start at right tackle should McGlinchey miss time. So I'm really going to look at him, see how he does. We saw him a little bit at the end of last season, week 18 against the Rams, but I'm really hoping that McKivitz can go out there, just look really comfortable, really confident in his play, and I think he's done pretty well so far in preseason. But essentially, what we're looking for is the offensive line just to be a little bit more consistent. Not only in the pass blocking, but also the run blocking lanes. Again, somewhat inconsistent. It's one of those things where, and I criticized Trey Sermon too. There were some opportunities for Sermon, but also the holes, they weren't there all of the time. We saw even TDP on a number of his runs against Minnesota where there was nothing there and he just had to bounce outside and kind of make something happen. So overall, a little bit more consistency from the offensive line, but really excited to see the development, especially Jason Poe, who's really coming on strong, but continue to see Spencer Burford get more reps. Hopefully Jake Brendel will be there, can really solidify that center spot, and then McKivitz holding it down in place of Mike McGlinchey should McGlinchey miss any time. Now, point number 4, which was also maybe a little bit of a cop-out, not a player in particular, but just really want to see the depth on the defensive line. So a couple of guys on the interior that I'm really looking at are going to be Hassan Ridgeway, who got some snaps against the Vikings, Kevin Givens, let's see him continue his play, Javon Kinlaw, a really, really nice sack against, it was Kellen Mond of the Vikings. He had a couple of great plays against Minnesota, so I'm fairly comfortable with what I've seen so far out of Javon, but I really want to see that depth, because that's one of the big things with this defense is we do rotate in and out guys a lot to keep our star players fresh and our starters fresh, especially when it comes to those key situations like later in the game and the fourth quarter or key third downs, things of that nature. But not only on the interior, so on the the edge as well. Want to see Turay continue to do his thing. Drake Jackson has been phenomenal so far, been really, really impressing. Hopefully he continues to do that. But then there's other guys too. Maybe Charles Omenihu. He's a guy who got talked up a lot before the preseason, and it's kind of faded a little bit in my eyes, but I like to see him continue to make plays. Of course, Kerry Hyder, Jordan Willis. Wow, the names just keep coming on and on and on. And so it really does show the depth on this defensive line. But I think, look, there's going to be some tough decisions to be made when it comes to roster cutdown day. So this could be a key game to see who really earns that spot out there. Because there's only so many spots that we can guys and because there's only so many guys that we can end up keeping on the roster. As much as I'd like to keep every defensive lineman because they've been playing really well, we can't. It's just a numbers game at the end of the day. So ultimately, the performance of the defensive line going to really, really zero in on that on defense. And the fifth and final thing that I'm going to be looking at is a player in particular, and that is going to be Deommodore Lenoir. Now, here's the thing. We haven't seen Charvarius Ward or Emmanuel Moseley in preseason. By all accounts, they're going to be absolutely ready to go for week 1, but, you know, it's one of those things where every single season, your depth will be tested. So I think there's going to be times, there's going to be some games here and there, maybe where Moseley or Charvarius get dinged up, where they're going to have to miss a couple weeks. I think Lenoir had a great bounce back game against the Minnesota Vikings. I like to think that maybe he'll have a good week of practice and then really show what he can do in this final preseason game. Now, Sammy Womack has seemingly locked down that nickelback spot, and he has been a 5th round steal so far. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but he's looked really good. But then it comes down to on the outside. So, of course, you know, we have, you know, Lenoir as well behind Ward and Moseley. We have Ambry Thomas, who I'm also a big fan of, but I think he's been hurt a little bit, didn't play against Minnesota. We have Jason Verrett coming back from injury. Dante Johnson's been hurt. Tariq Castro-Fields actually got quite a few snaps against the Vikings too, so maybe he can look to improve. But the guy I think who would probably at this point be the #1 backup should anything happen to Moseley or to Ward is going to be Lenoir. So, you know, really like to see Lenoir have a big, strong game against the Texans, solid coverage, no penalties, you know, maybe a couple of passes defensed, be in the right place at the right time, and earn his spot on the 53-man roster. Alrighty guys, so that's going to do it for my preview of the 49ers matchup against the Houston Texans. Now, ultimately, we can continue to see what we've seen so far. You know, consistency out of Trey Lance. Maybe we see a little bit more improvement in consistency in the running game. Watch the defense keep doing their thing, keep forcing turnovers. The other thing which I really didn't mention is the special teams. Not only our returning, but also our coverage. Let's make sure that we're, you know, keeping that on lockdown. Like to see Ray McLeod out there a little bit more as well. But overall, I think it's going to be a fun game. Again, I will be live streaming the first half of the game, so really hoping that any and all of you can come join the stream. It's always a whole bunch of fun when you guys stop by and we have good conversations going on, and of course the reactions to the plays as they happen. But I really do want to say thank you to everyone who comes by the channel, who likes the videos, who watches the videos, who leaves comments. Not only does it help the channel grow, but also I just really love the engagement too. So it really makes it, you know, just really I don't know, it means a lot, and it's just really something that I love doing, so it's a whole lot of fun. So thank you to all of you guys who support the channel in any way possible. But I'm gonna leave it there, and you know there's 2 things that I'm gonna say. The butt counts, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.